The sun hung low over the dusty horizon of Route 17, casting long shadows across the cracked asphalt that snaked through the Nevada Badlands. It was late afternoon, the kind where the heat shimmered like a mirage, turning the air thick and unforgiving. A yellow school bus, its paint chipped and faded from years of hauling kids through these forgotten stretches, sputtered to a halt just off the shoulder. Smoke curled from the engine like a distress signal, and inside, 30 wide-eyed children from Willow Creek Elementary froze in their seats. The driver, a weary man named Harlan with grease-stained hands, cursed under his breath as he popped the hood, but the vehicle was done, stranded miles from the nearest town, with no cell signal and the temperature already dipping toward the chill of desert night. The kids, ages 8 to 12, erupted into a chorus of anxious whispers. Little Mia, with her braids unraveling from the bumpy ride, clutched her backpack like a shield, her eyes darting to the vast emptiness outside. "Mr. Harlan, what's out there?" she asked, her voice trembling. The older boys, trying to play tough, pressed their faces against the windows, but even they couldn't hide the fear creeping in. Rumors had spread through the school about this rally, the Iron Vipers' annual gathering, a thunderous assembly of motorcycles that drew hundreds from across the state. And now the distant roar of engines echoed like an approaching storm, growing louder, closer. Harlan wiped sweat from his brow, scanning the horizon. "Stay put, kids. Help's comin'." But deep down, he knew the truth. Out here, help was a long shot. That's when the ground began to vibrate, a low rumble built into a symphony of raw power, Harleys, choppers, and custom beasts tearing up the road. The convoy appeared like a black tide rolling in, leather-clad riders in formation, bandanas whipping in the wind, the glint of chrome catching the dying light. At the lead was Jax Harlan, no relation to the driver, but fate had a twisted sense of humor. Jax was a broad-shouldered man in his late 40s, his face weathered by sun and sorrow, a jagged scar tracing his jawline from a long-ago skirmish in the sands of the Middle East. He'd traded his uniform for a Kuta years back, founding the Iron Vipers not for chaos, but for the brotherhood that had saved him when the world hadn't. His bike, a matte black beast named Promise, growled to a stop at the bus's side, followed by 50 more riders fanning out in a protective arc. The children gasped, some shrinking back, others peering out with a mix of terror and fascination. Jax killed the engine, the sudden silence amplifying the ticks of cooling metal and the faint whimpers from inside the bus. He swung off his ride, boots crunching gravel, and approached with deliberate calm. Harlan stepped out, hands raised instinctively. "Easy there. Bus broke down. Kids from the school need a tow or a ride to town." Jax's eyes, steel-grey and unyielding, scanned the faces pressed against the glass. He saw Mia's tear-streaked cheeks, the way the boys huddled like cornered animals. A flicker crossed his features, something raw, buried deep. 20 years ago, he'd made a vow in a foxhole to a fallen brother. Protect the innocent, no matter the cost. That promise had pulled him through the darkness, forged the Vipers into more than a club. They were guardians in a world that chewed up the vulnerable. "Get the kids water first," Jax barked to his second-in-command, a wiry veteran named Lucas, whose tattoos told stories of battles won and lost. The riders dismounted in unison, a well-oiled machine of motion. One by one, they pulled insulated packs from their saddlebags, bottles of cool water, energy bars, even spare jackets against the encroaching dusk. Lucas, with his gentle smile belying the ink on his knuckles, boarded the bus first. "Hey, troopers," he said softly, handing out the supplies. "Name's Lucas. We're the good guys today." The kids hesitated, then reached out, the tension easing like a knot untying. Mia took a bar with shaky hands, whispering, "Are you gonna leave us here?" Jax overheard from the doorway, his broad frame filling the space. He knelt to her level, the scent of leather and motor oil mingling with the bus's stale air. "Not a chance, kid. We're getting you all home safe. That's a promise." His voice was gravelly, laced with the weight of oaths kept and broken. Harlan watched, stunned, as the bikers transformed the breakdown into an impromptu camp. They jury-rigged a generator from one of their trucks to power the bus's AC, shared stories to distract the frightened faces, tales of desert rides and midnight stars, nothing gory, just enough to spark wonder. Ethan, a lanky 12-year-old with a fresh bruise from playground scuffles, edged closer to Jax. "Why are you helping? Isn't this your party?" Jax paused, the rally's distant bonfires flickering like beacons on the horizon. He'd come here to honor another vow, to his late wife, Eleanor, who'd begged him on her deathbed to keep the Vipers on the right path, away from the shadows that had claimed her family. This act felt like her hand guiding him. "Because someone helped me once when I was lost," he replied, clapping Ethan's shoulder. "And promises like that, they don't break easy." The parents back in Willow Creek, waiting at the school lot, had no idea. Phones were dead out here, but word would spread about the Rough Riders who turned a nightmare into a lifeline. As night fell, stars pricking the velvet sky, the Vipers organized the tow. They hitched the bus to a flatbed from their convoy, riders flanking it like a honor guard. Jax rode point, the wind whipping his graying hair, a quiet resolve settling over him. This wasn't just a detour. It was a reminder that in the roar of engines and the dust of the road, loyalty could bridge any chasm. The kids, now chattering excitedly, waved from the windows as the procession rumbled toward town. Mia clutched a viper patch Lucas had given her, a talisman of unlikely heroes. What started as fear had shifted to something profound, a spark of trust in strangers who chose to stand tall. But as they crested the final hill, Jax's radio crackled. A voice from the rally, trouble brewing, whispers of a bigger storm. The sheriff's office had gotten wind of the convoy, and not everyone saw bikers as saviors. Accusations flew, reckless endangerment, unlawful assembly. Jax gripped the handlebars tighter, the scar on his jaw itching like a warning. This ride home was just the beginning. The parents would be shocked, yes, but the real test of that promise lay ahead. In the shadows of corruption that threatened to swallow the light they'd just kindled, the convoy rolled into Willow Creek under the glow of street lamps, the bus intact, the kids safe. Parents rushed forward, faces paling at the sight of leather and chrome, then softening as their children spilled out with tales of water and warmth. Jax dismounted last, nodding to Harlan. "Tell him it's on us." But in his eyes burned the fire of unfinished business, a call from the past, pulling him toward a fight for justice that would bind these strangers into something unbreakable. The night air hummed with possibility, the desert wind carrying whispers of redemption yet to come. The streetlights of Willow Creek flickered like hesitant stars against the inky night, casting a warm halo over the school parking lot where anxious parents had gathered. The air carried the faint tang of exhaust and cooling engines, mingling with the scent of fresh-cut grass from the nearby field. As the flatbed towed the school bus to a gentle stop, doors creaked open and the children tumbled out, faces flushed with a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. Mia clutched her viper patch like a secret treasure, while Ethan waved enthusiastically at the riders, his earlier bruise forgotten in the glow of newfound adventure. Harlan, the driver, stepped down last, rubbing his neck with relief, but his eyes scanned the crowd warily. The parents, a cluster of everyday folks in jeans and hoodies, froze at the sight of the Iron Vipers. 50 strong, their bikes lined up like silent sentinels, leather creaking as they dismounted. Gasps rippled through the group. A mother named Sarah, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, pushed forward, her voice sharp with worry. "What in the world happened? Who are you people?" She scooped up her daughter. a wide-eyed girl named Olivia, who immediately launched into a breathless recounting. "Mom! They gave us water and told stories. The big guy's bike is called Promise." Sarah's expression softened, confusion battling gratitude as she glanced at Jax, who stood apart, arms folded, his scar catching the light like a silver thread. Jax Harlan had seen this look before, the initial recoil from the unkempt beards and tattoos, the instinctive fear of the unknown. But he'd learned long ago that appearances were just road dust. It was the heart beneath that mattered. One by one, the parents approached, their questions tumbling out like pebbles down a slope. A father, broad-shouldered like Jax but softer around the edges, named Benjamin, clapped Harlan on the back. "Bus trouble out there. We heard the rally was close, thought we might have to hike out ourselves." Harlan nodded, gesturing to the bikers. "These folks, they showed up like ghosts in the machine, towed us the whole way, kept the kids calm." Whispers spread, phones emerging from pockets to snap photos, not of suspicion now, but of awe. Lucas, ever the diplomat, handed out more water bottles, his easy grin disarming the tension. "Just doing what neighbours do," he said to a cluster of mums, including Emily, who held her son close. Emily's eyes met Jax's across the lot, and she mouthed a silent, "Thank you," her shoulders relaxing for the first time that evening. Jax watched it all from the shadows of his bike, the low hum of the rally's distant music fading into the background. This moment felt like a fragile truce, a brief shine on the tarnished armor of his world. 20 years since that foxhole promise to his fallen brother Marcus, protect the innocent, stand as the wall between them and the storm. The Vipers had been born from that oath, a brotherhood forged in the fires of war and loss, not for glory, but for redemption. Elena's death 5 years back had tested it further, her final words echoing in his mind. "Keep them whole, Jax. Make us mean something good." Tonight, towing that bus, he'd felt her presence in the wind, guiding his hands on the throttle. But as the parents' gratitude swelled, hugs exchanged, hands shaken, Jax's radio buzzed again, insistent, pulling him back to the edge. He stepped away, thumbing the device. "Jax here." The voice on the other end was rough, belonging to Rico, a Viper scout left at the rally. "Boss, sheriff's boys are circling. They got wind of the convoy, claiming we disrupted traffic, endangered miners, deputies en route talking warrants." Jax's jaw tightened, the scar pulling taut. Corruption in Willow Creek wasn't new. Whispers of the sheriff's office turning a blind eye to local kingpins, shaking down small businesses for protection. Jax had steered clear, honoring Elena's wish to stay clean. But this, accusing his crew of harm when they'd been the salvation, it struck at the core of everything, the promise to shield the vulnerable, not just from breakdowns, but from the rot that festered in badge and uniform. He glanced back at the lot, where Ethan was showing Benjamin a trick with a bandana one of the riders had taught him, laughter cutting through the night. Mia sat on the bus steps, sketching a chopper on her notebook, her braids now neatly retied by a kind-eyed Viper named Grace, who'd ridden in the rear guard. These kids, these parents, they'd become part of the tapestry now, woven into the Viper's code without even knowing it. Jax couldn't let the law's shadow fall on them. "Hold the line," he told Rico. "I'll handle it." Pocketing the radio, he approached the group, his boots echoing softly on the pavement. The parents fell quiet, sensing the shift in his demeanor. "Listen up," Jax said, his voice carrying like gravel over thunder. "We're glad you're all safe, but there's trouble stirring. Folks in uniforms who see our kind as the problem, not the fix." Murmurs rose, Sarah's brow furrowing. "What do you mean?" Benjamin asked, stepping forward protectively. Jax met his gaze steadily. "Your sheriff's office is coming. Might spin this as us causing the breakdown, putting kids at risk, but we both know the truth." Emily clutched her son tighter. "They can't do that. You saved them." Jax nodded, a quiet fire in his eyes. Truth has a way of riding out storms. But if it comes to it, we'll stand for what's right, for them." He jerked his head toward the children, now clustered with the bikers, sharing glow sticks that painted faces in ethereal light. The lot buzzed with a new energy, parents exchanging glances, some nodding fiercely. Benjamin extended a hand. "If you need witnesses, you've got 'em, all of us." Jax clasped it, the grip firm, sealing an unspoken alliance. In that moment, the lines blurred. Not bikers versus townsfolk, but a chosen family against the encroaching dark. The desert wind picked up, carrying the faint scent of sagebrush as distant sirens wailed, a harbinger of the confrontation ahead. Jax mounted Promise, the engine rumbling to life like a heartbeat. This wasn't just about a tow anymore. It was about honoring vows that bound strangers into kin, justice carved from the raw stone of loyalty. As the first patrol car crested the hill, lights flashing blue and red, Jax's crew formed ranks instinctively, a wall of chrome and resolve. The parents stood with them, unyielding, their shock from earlier transformed into solidarity. Mia looked up at Jax from the crowd, her small voice cutting through. "You promised." He revved the engine in response, the roar a vow renewed. The night deepened, stars witnessing the quiet stand that would redefine them all. And now, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The patrol car's lights sliced through the Willow Creek night like accusatory blades, bathing the school parking lot in pulsing blue and red. Gravel crunched under its tires as it pulled up short, blocking the exit, its siren cutting off with a final wail that echoed off the brick walls of the elementary school. Deputy Harlan, unrelated to the bus driver, but sharing the same weary surname that seemed to haunt this town, stepped out, his uniform crisp under the floodlights, hand resting on his holster. He was a stocky man in his 30s, face set in a mask of authority that didn't quite hide the flicker of unease in his eyes. Behind him, two more cars idled, their engines a low growl matching the tension coiling in the air. The scent of hot rubber and sagebrush hung heavy, mingling with the faint, comforting aroma of cooling coffee from the parents' thermoses. Jax remained mounted on Promise, his broad frame silhouetted against the bike's matte black frame, engine idling like a restrained beast. The Vipers formed a loose semicircle, not aggressive but unyielding. Lucas to his right, arms crossed over his faded army jacket, Grace on the left, her ponytail swaying as she scanned the deputies with quiet intensity. The parents clustered behind them, a human barrier of everyday resolve. Sarah holding Olivia close, Emily shielding her son with one arm while clutching her phone in the other, Benjamin standing shoulder to shoulder with a few other dads, their faces etched with the kind of determination born from late-night worries over family safety. The children, sensing the shift, huddled nearer the bus, Mia's small hand slipping into Ethan's as they watched from the steps, glow sticks casting faint green halos on their faces. "Evening, folks," Deputy Harlan drawled, his voice carrying the drawl of someone who'd grown up in these parts, laced with false calm. He eyed the lineup of Harleys, then the bus, his gaze lingering on the viper patches like they were venomous. "Got reports of a disturbance, school bus off the road, kids involved. Sounds like reckless riding endangered minors. You all want to explain before we start citing?" His partners flanked him, notebooks out, but their postures screamed reluctance, as if they knew this script all too well. Whispers rippled through the parents, indignation bubbling like steam from a kettle. Benjamin stepped forward first, his voice steady. "Endangered. These men towed the bus here, kept our kids safe when no one else could." The deputy shifted, boots scraping pavement, ignoring Benjamin as he locked eyes with Jax. "Mr. Harlan, isn't it? Iron Vipers. We know your rally's been drawing the wrong crowd. Sheriff wants this convoy cleared out now, and we'll need statements from everyone." Jax killed the engine with a flick of his wrist, the sudden quiet amplifying the distant hum of the rally miles away, a reminder of the world they'd paused for this. He dismounted slowly, boots hitting ground with a solid thud, and approached, stopping just shy of arm's reach. Up close, the scar on his jaw gleamed under the lights, a map of old wounds that spoke louder than words. "Statements? We've got 30 of 'em right here," Jack said, jerking his thumb toward the kids and parents. "Bus broke down on Route 17. We fixed it, got 'em water, towed 'em home. If that's a crime, sheriff's got bigger problems than us." Harlan's jaw tightened, a vein pulsing at his temple. The air grew thicker, charged with the unspoken, the rot in Willow Creek's underbelly, where the sheriff's office turned blind eyes to local smugglers running protection rackets on farms and shops, pocketing kickbacks while real threats went unchecked. Jax had heard the rumors during rally stops. Families squeezed until they broke, like Elena's kin years back, before she'd pulled him from that spiral. Her promise echoed now: keep it clean, fight the shadows without becoming them. But this deputy, he reeked of it, the way his eyes darted to the parents, calculating leverage. "Rallies on public land," Harlan shot back. "But hauling a bus full of kids without permits, that's endangerment. Step aside or we'll make this official." Murmurs turned to protests. Sarah pushed forward, Olivia peeking from behind her legs. "Official? You should have been the ones out there helping." "My girl was terrified until they showed up." Emily nodded fiercely, her voice cracking with emotion. "I called the station hours ago. No answer. Where were you?" The deputy faltered, sweat beading on his brow despite the cooling night. The desert wind whispering through the lot like a conspirator. Lucas leaned in, his voice low but carrying. "We ain't moving till the truth's out. Kids are witnesses. Everyone." Grace, ever the quiet anchor, knelt by Mia and Ethan, distracting them with a story of desert stars, her words a soft counterpoint to the rising storm. Jax held the deputy's gaze, steel meeting tin. 20 years since the foxhole, Marcus's blood still warm on his hands, the vow sealing his path, protect the line between right and wrong, no badges required. This wasn't about the rally anymore. It was the corruption bleeding into the light, threatening the fragile trust they'd built. "Call your sheriff," Jack said evenly. "Tell him the Vipers are here for the innocent. Always have been." Harlan hesitated, radio crackling in his hand as he thumbed it. Static hissed, then a gruff voice responded. "Sheriff Tate, the man at the helm of Willow Creek's shadowed dealings. Harlan, what's the holdup? Clear 'em out. Rally's bad for business." The words hung, damning in their casual cruelty. Parents gasped, phones raising higher now, recording the exchange. Benjamin's face hardened. "Business! This is about our kids!" The deputy paled, realizing the slip, but Jax pressed the advantage, his voice a low rumble. "Sounds like you've got permits for the wrong things, deputy. We can talk off the record, or let these folks decide." The lot pulsed with unity, the Vipers and townsfolk a seamless front, chrome glinting like drawn swords under the moon. Harlan backed toward his car, radio clutched like a lifeline, the weight of exposed lies pressing down. As the deputy retreated, promising to check with the boss, Jax turned to the group, his presence a steady anchor. "This ain't over," he murmured to Lucas and Grace, who nodded, their bond unspoken but ironclad. The parents gathered closer, Sarah offering a water bottle in quiet thanks, Emily whispering to Benjamin about pooling statements. Mia tugged Jax's sleeve, her eyes wide but trusting. "You kept your promise." He ruffled her hair gently, the gesture heavy with the ghosts of vows past. Marcus, Elena, the brotherhood that had become his chosen kin. The night deepened, patrol cars idling uncertainly, but the air hummed with a new resolve. Word would spread from this lot, rippling through Willow Creek like the desert wind, exposing the sheriff's grip. Jack's remounted promise, the engines roar a declaration as the first hints of dawn tinged the horizon. This stand had forged something unbreakable, a family extended, promises renewed against the tide of corruption. But as the radio crackled again with urgent chatter from Rico at the rally, Jax knew the real ride was just beginning, pulling them toward a reckoning that would test every scar and oath. The first blush of dawn crept over the jagged peaks surrounding Willow Creek, painting the sky in strokes of pale gold and lingering indigo. The school parking lot, still humming with the aftermath of the standoff, felt like the eye of a gathering storm. Tires crunching softly as the patrol cars finally peeled away, their taillights fading into the morning mist. Jax Harlan sat astride Promise, the bike's engine ticking down to silence, his calloused hands gripping the handlebars as if anchoring himself against the tide of what was unfolding. The air carried the crisp bite of dew-kissed sage and the faint, acrid tang of exhaust, a reminder that the night's fragile peace was just that, fragile. Parents lingered in clusters, their faces drawn but fierce, exchanging hushed words about statements and solidarity, while the children, bleary-eyed but buzzing with the thrill of it all, clustered near the bus with the vipers who'd become their unlikely guardians. Rico's voice crackled over the radio again, sharper this time, cutting through the quiet like a knife. "Boss, it's escalating at the rally. Sheriff's got roadblocks up on the access road, claiming safety violations from the convoy. But word's out, they're shaking down vendors, pulling aside riders for inspections that smell like extortion. One of our own, Tommy, got roughed up. Says the deputies mentioned the bus incident like it's leverage." Jax's scar throbbed, a phantom ache from old battles as he pictured it. The rally grounds, bonfires now smouldering embers under the rising sun. Chrome bikes lined like fallen soldiers, while badges prowled for easy marks. Tommy was a young viper, barely out of his 20s, fresh from a tour in the sands where Jax had pulled him from the brink, another thread in the web of promises that bound them. "On our way," Jax replied, his voice a low growl that brooked no argument. He glanced at Lucas and Grace, who nodded in unison, their faces set like flint. The brotherhood stirred, engines firing up in a ripple of thunder that made the ground tremble. But as Jax prepared to lead the ride out, Benjamin approached, his broad frame casting a long shadow in the dawn light. The father's eyes, red-rimmed from the vigil, held a quiet fire. "You're not going alone. Whatever this is, it's tied to what you did for our kids. Willow Creek's been bleeding under that sheriff for years. Farms foreclosed, shops closing. If it's a fight for the truth, count us in." Sarah joined him, Olivia's small hand in hers, her voice steady despite the tremor. "We saw how you stood. My husband's a mechanic. He can help with the bikes if needed. And Emily's got connections at the local paper. Real journalism, not the fluff." Emily nodded from nearby, her son peeking out with wide eyes, the glow stick from last night still clutched in his fist like a talisman. The offer hung in the air, heavy with the weight of strangers choosing sides, forging bonds in the crucible of shared outrage. Jax paused, the wind tugging at his kuta, carrying the distant whoop of early birdsong from the desert fringes. This was Elena's echo, her plea to build something lasting, a family not of blood, but of unbreakable will. In the foxhole with Marcus, the promise had been simple: shield the weak, honor the line. But here, in this dusty lot, it expanded, pulling in these townsfolk like threads into a larger weave. "Appreciate it," he said, extending a hand to Benjamin. Their clasp was firm, sealing the pact. "Meet at the rally edge in an hour. Bring what you can, witnesses, tools, whatever speaks truth." The parents dispersed with purpose, phones buzzing as they coordinated, the lot emptying like a stage after the curtains tease. Mia lingered longest, slipping a drawing into Jax's vest pocket, a crude sketch of a chopper under stars, labeled "Promise Keeper" in wobbly letters. He knelt, the gravel biting his knees, and met her gaze. "We'll make it right, kid, for all of you." The ride to the rally was a procession of resolve, Vipers thundering ahead with the borrowed truck from Benjamin trailing, loaded with tools and a few determined parents. Route 17 unfurled like a scarred ribbon, the sun climbing to burn off the mist, revealing the Badlands' skeletal yuccas standing sentinel. Jax led point, the wind whipping his graying hair, thoughts churning like pistons. Corruption wasn't new. He'd danced with it in war zones, seen how it festered when unchecked. Sheriff Tate's grip on Willow Creek mirrored the warlords back then, extorting the vulnerable, twisting law into a noose. The bus breakdown had cracked it open, exposing the rot to light. But light could blind as much as reveal, and Jax knew the cost. His crew's freedom, the kids' safety, the fragile trust now blooming. They crested the rise to the rally grounds, a vast basin ringed by low hills, where the Iron Viper's banners snapped in the breeze like defiant flags. But the scene below was chaos veiled in order. Roadblocks of sawhorses and flares, deputies barking orders at milling riders, the air thick with shouts and the snarl of revving engines held in check. Tommy nursed a split lip near a cluster of bikes, his Viper brothers forming a protective ring. Jax killed his engine at the perimeter, boots hitting dirt with purpose, Lucas and Grace flanking him like shadows. The deputies turned, Harlan among them, his face paling at the reinforced arrival. "Harlan again!" Jax called out, striding forward, the sun glinting off his buckle. "Twice in one night. Must be my lucky day." The deputy straightened, but his eyes darted to the truck pulling up, parents spilling out with cameras and notepads. "This is private property. Rally permits revoked. Clear out or face arrests." Tommy spat blood into the dust, his voice hoarse. "Private? They trashed our setup, pocketed cash from the food stands, said it was fines for the bus stunt." Murmurs swelled from the Vipers, a tide of leather and loyalty rising. Benjamin stepped up beside Jax. "Phone recording. We've got statements from the school. 30 kids, 1 driver, all saying the opposite." Sarah's voice cut through, sharp as a blade. "And if you touch these men, you'll answer to us. The whole town's watching now." Harlan faltered, radio in hand, but the static from Tate's response was audible even at a distance, curses laced with panic. The standoff thickened. The sun beating down like judgment, sense of hot metal and sweat mingling in the heat. Jax felt the pull of it all, Marcus's vow, Elena's whisper, the kids' trust. This was the moral precipice, stand silent or ride into the fray for justice's raw edge. He locked eyes with the deputy, voice steady as bedrock. "Promises made in the dark don't fade in the light. Yours end here." The air crackled with tension, riders shifting, parents unyielding, as the first cracks in the sheriff's facade spiderwebbed outward. Grace whispered to Lucas, her hand on her knife, not for violence but reminder, while Tommy straightened, wiping his mouth, ready to testify. In that suspended moment, with engines idling like held breaths and the desert wind carrying echoes of distant thunder, the alliance solidified. The Vipers, the parents, the scarred souls of Willow Creek, they were no longer strangers. This reckoning would demand sacrifice, testing oaths against the grind of corruption. But Jax knew. Loyalty's fire burned brightest in the storm's heart. As Tate's voice barked retreat over the radio, the tide turned, pulling them toward a dawn of hard-won truth. If this chapter's got your blood pumping with the thrill of standing tall, hit that like button. It helps these stories of honor and heart reach more riders on the road. The sun climbed higher over the rally basin, turning the air into a shimmering haze that distorted the horizon like a fever dream. Dust devils swirled lazily across the trampled earth, kicking up the sharp scent of dry sage and overheated metal, while the low growl of idling engines formed a constant undercurrent to the mounting unrest. Jax Harlan stood at the forefront of the Viper line, his boots planted firm in the red dirt, the weight of his scooter a familiar anchor against the chaos unfolding. Behind him, the Brotherhood held formation, 50 riders strong. Their faces a mosaic of scars and resolve, eyes locked on the roadblocks where deputies milled like uneasy sentries. Tommy, his lip still swollen and crusted, leaned against a chopper, flanked by Lucas and Grace, who scanned the perimeter with the quiet vigilance of those who'd stared down worse than badgers in the dead of night. The parents from Willow Creek had integrated seamlessly into the fray, their borrowed truck parked like a makeshift command post, hood up as Benjamin tinkered with a Viper's sputtering carburetor, his hands black with grease, but steady. Sarah paced nearby, phone pressed to her ear, coordinating with Emily at the local paper, a fierce woman whose notepad was already filling with quotes from rattled vendors. "This isn't just about the rally," Sarah said into the line, her voice cutting through the din. "It's the whole rotten system, extortion dressed as law." Olivia sat cross-legged on the truck's tailgate, sketching the scene with colored pencils, her small world expanding in strokes of blue for the bikes and red for the flares. Ethan hovered close to Tommy, the boy's earlier awe now tempered with a kid's grasp of injustice. "They can't just take stuff, right? That's not fair." Tommy ruffled the kid's hair, wincing at the pull on his bruise. "Fair's what we make it, squirt. These folks are teaching us how." Jax's radio buzzed once more, Rico's voice tight with urgency from a vantage point on the hill. "Tate's pulling in reinforcements, state troopers maybe, but the vendors are talking. One's got photos of deputies pocketing cash last year. If we hold, this blows wide open." Jax thumbed the device, his grey eyes narrowing against the glare. The sheriff's web had tangled far, farms squeezed for fees that lined pockets, shops shuttered under false violations, all while real dangers, like stranded buses on remote roads, went ignored. It mirrored the shadows Jax had fled after Marcus's fall, the foxhole promise, a beacon against such decay. Guard the line, let no one cross into harm's way. Elena's echo joined it now, her soft plea from that hospital bed: build bridges, not walls of vengeance. This alliance, these townsfolk stepping into the dust with them, felt like her vision taking shape, raw and unyielding. A shout from the roadblock shattered the fragile standoff. Deputy Harlan, sweat staining his collar, barked orders as 2 more patrol cars screeched to a halt, disgorging uniformed figures who fanned out with batons at the ready. Sheriff Tate himself emerged from the lead vehicle, a barrel-chested man in his 50s with a mustache, like a broom bristle, and eyes cold as polished stone. He strode forward, ignoring the Viper wall, his gaze sweeping the unexpected reinforcements, the parents, the kids, the borrowed truck, like they were an insult to his authority. "Harlan!" Tate growled, addressing Jax with deliberate familiarity, as if naming him kin could diminish the threat. "This rally's over. Permits revoked for safety. Your convoy's the hazard. And that bus stunt? Witnesses say you spooked the driver into breaking down." The lie hung blatant, met with a ripple of derisive laughs from the Vipers. Benjamin straightened from the engine, wiping his hands on a rag, and stepped up beside Jax, his mechanic's build matching the bikers in quiet strength. "Witnesses. Try 30 kids and a driver who'll swear otherwise. We were there, saw the gratitude with our own eyes." Tate's face reddened, the sun beating down like an impartial judge, highlighting the beads of perspiration tracking his temples. Sarah thrust her phone forward, screen glowing with a vendor's time-stamped photo, a deputy slipping bills into his pocket behind a food tent. "And this, from last night's inspection, we care to explain to the paper." Emily, arriving in a dust-caked sedan with a reporter's satchel slung over her shoulder, began snapping photos, her flash cutting through the haze like accusations. The sheriff faltered, his baton hand twitching, but the air thickened with the weight of exposure, no longer whispers in back rooms, but daylight reckoning. Jax felt the pull of it all, the moral tide surging. 20 years carrying Marcus's vow, 5 since Elena's, and now this, strangers bound by a single act of kindness, standing against the corruption that preyed on the overlooked. He advanced a step, voice low but carrying like thunder rolling in. "Tate, your game's up. The bus was a breakdown, not a setup. We fixed it, towed those kids home while your office sat idle. But shaking down honest folks, that's the real endangerment." The sheriff's eyes darted to his deputies, who shifted uneasily, batons lowering as parents and riders closed ranks. Grace knelt by Olivia, shielding the girl with her body, while Lucas murmured encouragement to Tommy, the young viper's resolve hardening like forged steel. Ethan clutched a viper patch, his small fist tight, whispering to Mia, who tagged along in the truck, "They're like superheroes, but real." Tate's radio crackled, a dispatcher's voice urgent. "Sheriff, media's en route. Channel 7 got a tip." The words landed like a gut punch, the basin falling into a charged hush, broken only by the wind sifting through banner strings. Tate's facade cracked, his bluster deflating into a snarl. "This ain't your fight, Harlan, back off or—" But Jax cut him off, the scar on his jaw catching the light like a vow etched in silver. "It is now. For the kids, the vendors, every soul you've bled dry. Promises like ours don't bend to threats." The sheriff retreated a pace, gesturing to his men, the roadblocks parting like a dam breached. Engines revered in triumph, not aggression, a symphony of unity as vipers and townsfolk exhaled, the dust settling like confetti on a hard-won field. As the patrol cars reversed, tails between legs, Jax turned to the group, his broad shoulders easing for the first time since dawn. Benjamin clapped his back, Sarah offering a weary smile, Emily already typing furiously on her phone. The children cheered, Mia waving her sketch like a flag, but in Jax's chest stirred the quiet knowledge. This victory was a spark, not the fire's end. Whispers from Rico hinted at deeper roots, Tate's ties to City Hall, files buried in evidence lockers. The ride back to Willow Creek would carry them forward, alliances forged in desert heat, toward a full unveiling. The sun arced toward noon, casting long shadows that danced like freed spirits, the air alive with the promise of justice unbroken. Loyalty's chain, once a solitary burden, now linked them all, hearts beating as one against the fading dark. The midday sun blazed over the rally basin like a forge hammer, turning the red earth into a skillet that radiated heat in waves, distorting the air and carrying the sharp bite of scorched rubber and sun-baked leather. Jax Harlan wiped sweat from his brow with the back of his hand, the salt stinging the edges of his scar as he surveyed the dispersing deputies. Their patrol cars kicking up dust plumes in hasty retreat, taillights winking like defeated eyes in the glare. The roadblocks lay abandoned, sawhorses toppled like fallen dominoes, and the Viper's banners snapped free in the rising thermals, their iron threads glinting as if reborn. The air hummed with a collective exhale, the low rumble of engines idling down to murmurs, mingled with the relieved chatter of vendors emerging from tents, pockets lighter but spirits lifted by the turning tide. Tommy straightened fully now, spitting the last of the copper tang from his mouth onto the dirt, his split lip curving into a grim smile as Lucas clapped his shoulder with a nod that spoke volumes. No words needed in a brotherhood tempered by fire. Grace scooped up Olivia, the girl's laughter bubbling like a desert spring as she pointed to the sky, where a hawk circled lazy loops, its shadow fleeting over the chaos. Ethan tugged at Benjamin's sleeve, eyes wide with the thrill of it all. "Did we win, Dad, like in those stories?" Benjamin ruffled the boy's hair, his mechanic's hands still smudged with grease from the impromptu repairs, and glanced at Jax with a look of shared gravity. "Not yet, son, but we're rolling toward it." Sarah pocketed her phone, the screen still glowing with sent messages, to the paper, to allies in town hall. Her face flushed, not just from the heat, but from the fire of purpose ignited in a single night. Jax felt the weight shift, the moral anchor of Marcus's foxhole vow settling deeper into his bones, intertwined now with Elena's whisper. Build something that lasts, a legacy of light against the encroaching shadows. This wasn't the end of the ride. Tate's retreat was a feint, the sheriff's deeper entanglements, ties to off-the-books deals with city developers eyeing Willow Creek's fringes for shady expansions, lurking like roots beneath the surface. But here, in this basin scarred by bonfires and boot prints, the alliance had taken root too. Vipers and townsfolk, strangers no more. Their loyalties forging a chain stronger than any badger's grasp. Rico approached from the hill, his scout's gait quick and sure, radio clipped to his belt like a talisman. "Media's swarming the access road," he reported, voice low. "Channel 7's lead van just rolled in, got wind of the photos. Tate's scrambling, but it's out there now." The group converged instinctively, a circle of resolve amid the dissipating dust. Parents, riders, even a few vendors joining the fray with nods of gratitude. Emily, her reporter's notebook dog-eared and ink-smeared, jotted final notes. Her son perched on her hip, clutching a spare bandana like a badge of honor. "This story's going statewide," she said, meeting Jax's gaze. "Not just the rally, the bus, the kids, the extortion. You've given us the spark. We'll fan the flames." Jax nodded, the sun warming his back like an approving hand, the scent of sagebrush rising on a breeze that carried hints of rain from distant mountains. He'd carried promises alone for so long, Marcus's bloodied oath in the sand, Elena's fading breath urging redemption. But this was the fulfillment, a family chosen in the crucible of crisis, their quiet actions rippling outward like stones skipped across a still pond. As the first news van crested the rise, cameras thrusting like eager spears, Jax raised a hand to his crew. "Mount up. We ride home together." Engines roared to life in a cascading symphony, Harleys and choppers growling in harmony with the truck's steady rumble. The procession forming a thunderous column that snaked toward Willow Creek. Jax led on promise, the wind tearing at his kuta, whipping grey strands across his vision as the Badlands blurred by, yuccas bowing like sentinels, the horizon unfolding in golden promise. Behind him, Lucas and Grace bookended the parents' vehicle, Tommy riding shotgun with Ethan waving from the window, Mia's sketch fluttering like a flag from the side mirror. The ride was meditative, the vibration of the road syncing with heartbeats, the vast sky above a canvas of unmarred blue that mirrored the clarity settling in Jax's soul. They arrived at the school lot as the sun dipped toward afternoon's embrace, casting long shadows that danced like celebratory spirits across the pavement. Word had spread ahead, phones alive with texts and calls, and a small crowd gathered, teachers, shop owners, farmers with weathered faces and unyielding eyes, drawn by the whispers of change. Harlan, the driver, waited by the bus, now repaired under Benjamin's watchful eye, and raised a fist in salute as the convoy rolled in. Parents dismounted the truck first, enveloped in hugs from the assembly, their tales spilling out in animated bursts, the breakdown, the bikers' arrival, the dawn standoff. Olivia darted to her mother, sketchbook in hand, while Ethan high-fived Tommy, the boy's bruise from schoolyard woes, now a badge of bigger battles shared. Jax killed Promise's engine last, the silence ringing profound, broken only by the soft coo of doves in the eaves. He dismounted, boots echoing on the cooling asphalt, and approached the circle forming around him. Sarah stepped forward, her arms open. "You didn't just save the bus. You saved something in us. Willow Creek's been waiting for folks like you." Benjamin nodded, extending a grease-streaked hand. "The paper's running it tomorrow. Tate's done. Investigators are already sniffing." Jax clasped it, feeling the echo of foxhole grips, the warmth of Elena's imagined smile in the fading light. Mia slipped through the crowd, pressing another drawing into his palm. A family of choppers under a starry sky, labeled Our Promise. He knelt, the gravel familiar under his knees, and whispered, "Kept it, kid, and we'll keep watching over it." As the crowd thinned, handshakes lingering into promises of barbecues and rides, Jax lingered by his bike, the desert wind cooling his skin, carrying the faint aroma of mesquite from a distant fire. The Vipers gathered loose, Lucas lighting a smoke, Grace checking saddlebags with quiet efficiency. This reckoning had cost scars renewed, Tommy's lip, the hours of vigilance, but the yield was redemption's quiet bloom. Justice not seized by force, but claimed through loyalty's unyielding stand. Tate's empire would crumble under the weight of truth, exposed by the very innocence he'd overlooked, and in its fall, Willow Creek would rise, stitched together by threads of honor. The sun slipped below the peaks, painting the sky in fiery hues of orange and crimson, a cinematic farewell to the day's trials. Jax revved, promise one last time, the roar a benediction as the Brotherhood and their new kin parted ways, not as endings, but as waypoints on a longer road. Promises, once solitary echoes, now resonated in chorus, a legacy of chosen family enduring against any storm. In the hush of twilight, with stars pricking the velvet dome above, Jax rode into the gathering dusk, heart lighter, the scar on his jaw a testament not to pain, but to healing, forged in the fire of oaths unbroken. Thank you for riding this journey with us. From the breakdown on Route 17 to the dawn of justice in Willow Creek. If these tales of loyalty and redemption touched your soul, hit that subscribe button and join the crew. We'll see you on the next road, where promises never fade.